Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Metro Inner Development Assessment Panel meeting for this morning. Declare the meeting open at 9:36, and in doing so acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting on the traditional land of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respect to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, water and community. The meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP standing orders and DAP regulations 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting, assist them with considering the information before them. My name is Clayton Hyam. I'm your presiding member for today's meeting. With me I have Karen Hyde, the Deputy Presiding Member, John Syme, the Third Specialist Member, and Councillor Ingrid Van Dawson and Councillor Andrew Sullivan from the City of Fremantle, and later on we'll have Councillor Warner and Councillor Wallace from the City of Vincent. Apologies from Councillor Nicole Wolfe for the Part C City of Vincent matter. Minutes from previous meetings are available on the DAP website. Moving to Part B, the City of Fremantle matter, seeking declarations of due consideration. Can members indicate by raising hands that you have considered Part B, information in Part B of the agenda and Part B related information? Yes, thank you. Disclosures of interest. I have a disclosure of interest from Councillor Van Dawson that she was or attended a briefing session on this matter, and I'm happy for Councillor Van Dawson to continue to participate in the meeting. Are there any other disclosures of interest? No, thank you very much. Moving to item 3.1, the number 9 Catalini Lane, North Fremantle, 30 multiple dwellings. We've got two presenters. Dan Lee's online, followed by Peter Simpson in the meeting room. So, gentlemen, you know the rules around this, 3 minutes. And we'll follow that by asking some questions. So over to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Clayton. Now, if I can just share my screen, which is the... Which document is that? Sorry, just bear with me whilst I find the file to share. If I can just make reference to the plan which was attached to my deputation request, which I trust you have in your papers before you. But good morning, panel members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm speaking on behalf of Edge Visionary Living, who have purchased the neighbouring property to the west at 35 Leighton Beach Boulevard, and who are currently formulating a development proposal for that site. Our only request today is that the visitor car parking bay that is shown on the proposed plans within the shared right of carriageway area is either shifted to the southern end of what is described as the proposed new lane, or it is deleted entirely from any approval that you may grant today. And I note this is what the City of Fremantle has recommended as per condition 11. As shown on the slide that was attached to my deputation request, our client's concern is that the proposed location of this visitor car bay would conflict with the intended location of the vehicle access point and car park aisle of the future development on their site at 35 Leighton Beach Boulevard. I'll take my deputation request form as read, and I won't repeat this in full so as to keep this fairly short and to the point. But in simple terms, the proposed development site at number 9 Catalini Lane will provide half the width of this proposed new lane, and our client's site immediately to the west will provide the other half. This reflects the reciprocal rights of carriageway that are on the certificates of title to essentially provide a shared laneway for the mutual benefit of both sites for vehicle access purposes. In this regard, either shifting this bay to the south or deleting it entirely as per the city's recommendation is considered a fair and equitable outcome, and reflective of the overarching intent for the coordinated development of this precinct to utilise this single shared new lane and to ensure that there's no potential conflicts with vehicle swept paths for vehicles entering the proposed development site to the west at 35 Leighton Beach Boulevard. I'm happy to answer any questions on this item, and thank you very much for your time.
Dan, panel members, are there questions of Dan? No? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peter?
Yes.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to present. With me, I have Johnny Seldrick from Rockingham Park, and I think Richard Simpson is also online. And we have Brandon Mirror and Cassidy Hewitt from Hubble Design to answer any design questions. We support the recommendation, approve the application, and generally comfortable with the conditions. I might just address Mr. Lee's commentary. Obviously, condition 11 deals with this matter, and we're not contesting that condition. The city actually wanted us to amend the plans to remove it, and we requested that put a condition on it just because it was late in the RAR cycle, and we were just worried about a further delay. I'm sure that the two parties that own can work out what to do with the balance of the right of carriageway at the end, whether that's landscaping or car parking in the future. This is an application for 30 dwellings in 3-storey buildings and a land use, preferred land use. There's been quite a lot of discussion as the applications progressed in terms of the density we're proposing. Rockingham Park have owned the site for more than 20 years. It's been vacant for that period of time. They've gone through a number of iterations of designs with large basements and lots of car parking. And at the end of the day, the cost associated with that and the buildability of what they're trying to achieve, this outcome is the best approach for them to be able to actually deliver something on site. I don't take away from the fact that it's actually still a 3-storey scale, and that's consistent with the other buildings in the area. So the northern portion of the structure plan area are 3-storey buildings, and it sort of goes to higher buildings. And then we're down to 3 stories at this end. I imagine you probably see quite a large building from the potential purchasers of the site next door, and that may potentially balance up the density. So we think the scale is appropriate, and as I said, it's very buildable for M Park. It also should be noted that given that it's 3 stories, it actually maintains a lot of the views of the buildings on the fourth in terms of looking over this site towards the vista to the oceans. So we consider it's been well designed and will be a positive outcome for the site and enable the development to proceed. So we seek your approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. Members of the panel, are there questions of the applicants? Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. Just in terms of the laneway, my understanding originally was that the laneway would have access to Walter Place. What's the current situation with that? Obviously a left in, left out scenario, but is that now prohibited or just frowned upon by main roads, or what's the current scenario?
Yeah, so funnily enough, this application was the first application I did when I started my company in 2014, and it is main roads prohibits access to Walter Place by carriageway. We think there could be opportunities for left out, sort of makes sense, but they've been in their view that access shouldn't be provided.
So is there a legal restriction on the laneway in that regard? Like is there a like a PAW strip or something like that that prohibits access to that road?
Yeah, there is on title, there is a restriction, but I think it relates more to Curtin Avenue than Walter.
That was my understanding, is that Curtin Avenue was obviously a different scenario, but Walter Place, and bearing in mind that it won't form Curtin Avenue into the future. So I just wondered about the future of accessibility, not so much now, but in the future.
Well, I think it's probably something that can be explored with main roads where there's a connection through, because I agree with you, it probably assists traffic in the right of carriageway and, you know, stop all traffic.
And so just in terms of, in terms of it being a right of carriageway, obviously if that southern portion is permanently or temporarily not needed for the carriageway, is there a right of either owner effectively to have landscaping or fixed objects or parking in that area? I don't quite comprehend if something is a right of carriageway by either party as to how legally we would be able to be allowing anything other than right of carriage.
Yeah, so I suppose the simple answer to that is right of carriageways between two parties. So it's the parties of both lots. And so they could amend that right of carriageway in theory in terms of moving it a bit north and making that portion part of a lot which could be landscaped or put car parking on. So I think there's mechanics because the agreement is between the two parties for the two parties to come together to make a determination of what that outcome is. And whether that outcome is to push main roads to try and get access through, that might be another solution.
Even though it would have been a part of the subdivision of the area and the logical development of the area. So would it have to go back through subdivision, or are you saying it can just be by mutual agreement?
Well, I suppose the question is that it is a right of carriageway, and so that suggests that it's got carriageway over it. But I also note that in lots of carriageways there's landscaping, parking, all those sort of things. So I think there's some flexibility in it. In terms of the actual carriageway itself, if it needed to be subdivided to move the boundary of the carriageway, then that would need to be a process that went through.
Thank you. I was just asking simply because it impacts, I think, the planning decision that should be made versus the flexibility that might be afforded into the future.
So Peter, you're quite happy with condition 11 in that that's left there. You can then deal with Dan and sort out some mutual arrangement.
Exactly. I think the two parties, it's in their best interest to work out what that solution is, and whether that solution is a connection through and go and fight main road, then that would probably benefit both sites as well. From Dan's image, they don't seem to be needing that very southern portion. So whether that becomes landscaped or a car parking bay or some other outcome.
All right, thank you. Further questions?
Yeah, Peter, and
whatever was there initially.
Sorry, what's that?
Sorry, I think it was always intended that whatever we had there in terms of a visitor car parking bay or landscaping was always intended to be sacrificial. It was really provided for convenience until the adjoining lot was developed or came to a determination on a DA, and then we'd look to sort of mutually agree how that would be remedied and redeveloped.
Okay, thanks.
as I understand it, your landscaping plan shows a fairly substantial tree in that location.
Correct. It would be sacrificial.
Okay.
On redevelopment.
But
If we need to have a condition.
It makes up a substantial proportion of your required landscaping.
Correct.
Deep soil area, doesn't it? So it's an important element.
It is, yes.
And presumably right of carriageway doesn't necessarily mean right of vehicular carriageway. It could be just pedestrian access, couldn't it?
Correct.
It's still also right of access, right of carriageway. Yeah.
Further questions? No, okay, thank you very much. We'll move to the officers now. Online, John Dornan and Justin Lawrence. Gentlemen, are there any initial comments you want to make? I'm not seeking a full presentation from you, but are you have any comments to make about what's been discussed so far, or you have just happy to take questions?
Sorry. We recommended condition 11 because the right of access way easement does run all the way through to Walter Place, regardless of main roads not supporting access onto Walter Place. But if the two adjoining sites want to work together to provide landscaping or visitor parking in that area, the city wouldn't have any objection. We can provide an amended condition which states something like, should vehicle access along there be proposed in the future, that any landscaping be removed or landscaping be temporary in nature.
Do you think that's necessary, or is that something that could just naturally flow on from the condition that's already there?
I think it could naturally flow on.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Questions of the officers? Yes, Member Hahn.
Thank you. Just want to ask some questions around condition 13, which relates to a memorial on title relating to the port. So the port didn't raise any objection to this application, and I think the RAR, page 33, states that there's no need for restrictions under the local planning policy. So I just wonder what the relevance of condition 13 is, please.
Yeah, so I guess we considered it appropriate because the port is still in full operation and there is that risk of noise and odour from the port. I guess, yeah, the city wouldn't have any objection to it being removed, but given certain prevailing winds, there is that risk of odour.
I would probably also elaborate that the southern side, obviously opposite that block, is quite vacant. So noise and the likes does transfer quite easy from the port to the north end. We receive a lot of complaints from other Freeman Loop residents.
Okay, thank you.
Just to follow up on that, are you aware that there's been fairly recent advice around Section 70As that the obligation rests with the local government to lodge them, and all that the applicant is required to do is to give consent to that occurring? Are you aware of that?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I want to follow up on the issue of the laneway. The structure plan clearly shows the laneway having access at each end. That was the intent of the structure plan. And I'm just wondering on what grounds main roads have the capacity to restrict or comment on whether there should be access. I note that in the MRS reserve doesn't extend that far down Walter Place. It stops short of where the laneway enters. Is this just Main Roads Bluff, or does Main Roads have a legal capacity to be the decision maker in this regard?
Well, when it comes to access onto main roads and category roads, they do have control of that. So we can't obviously override their comments, and they do need consent to actually punch through onto that road when it is under their control. Similar happens obviously with crossovers along other main roads. We still need to go to main roads and get their consent to install those. We can't just go ahead and do it.
So would you imagine in the future when Curtin Avenue extends, continues southwards rather than using Walter Place, would that situation change? And would the intent of the structure plan be able to be implemented then?
Well, the question, I suppose, the hypothetical on in the future, if that does or doesn't, I think there's scope for it not to be required as it wraps around the Walter Place area if it was to extend on. If Main Roads releases that or not is another question. And if they were to release it and the structure plan was still in play, then yes, there would be scope that could be followed through with.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the officers? No. Okay, thank you, gentlemen. We'll move on to the item. Got a recommendation for approval with a number of conditions and advice notes. Going to seek a mover and a seconder for. Yes, Councillor Sullivan moving it, a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Van Dawson. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. I obviously support the application. It's great to see that that site's going to be developed after such a long period of time. I guess the thoughts and comments that I would have are primarily summed up by the design review panel notes. It is, essentially underwhelming, but of course the planning for the area has maximums, not so much minimums, and therefore it is compliant. It is interesting that the original proponents for the whole Leighton Beach development are still the owners of this site. The reality is that, I guess it's horses for courses. Their original intent was single residential to 30 metres from the edge of the white sand. This is certainly better than that in terms of density and being responsible around a Todd. It has some degree of density. I guess it's what we would describe as that middle tier of density. So that's better than low density, I guess. But I do worry about the precedent that has been set here. And I imagine planners will need to look at that in the area to the south as to whether, in fact, there needs to be minimum standards as well as maximum. You know, the issue of the whole subdivision creating these semi-dugout basements anyway, in preparation for basements, was in fact something that I pushed for, and the government actually agreed to, realising that adding 2 or 3 metres of extra fill across the entire site was probably not necessary and would save them money at the time. So that is why this site is actually subdivided and developed this way. So it is disappointing that not only this site is going to now have all of its parking at grade, where it lessens the capacity for landscaping and I guess pedestrian and resident amenity significantly. There was so much opportunity for resident amenity to be created, and it's not going to be created in this development. And based on the plan that we've seen from the adjoining site, it looks like they're also going to be doing parking at grade, and in fact have no residents facing Walter Place at the ground floor level. So there are significant issues that are flowing from this, but none of them are relative to, I guess, the capacity for our job is implementing the planning scheme as it is. And this development certainly complies with that. On the positive side, it's a very attractive development, as the design committee identified, and from the public realm, which is the most important aspect that we deal with, it certainly presents reasonably well. I do want to emphasise that I hope that in the future we can see the laneway having exits and entrance from Walter Place. I do note the concern that was raised by other residents that Leighton Boulevard along the front is already a busy road, and the idea that everyone has to drive onto that road to then get access to these developments just exacerbates that, and it wasn't the intent of the structure plan. And so that is really, really disappointing that main roads wouldn't even allow left in, left out. I can understand the idea of not having right-hand turns, but the less I say about main roads, the better, because I'll get myself in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you. My comment's very similar to Councillor Sullivan's. I do support the proposal, and I think it looks good. I also share the sentiments of the design review panel. It is disappointing that we're not getting more density in this location. We definitely have our targets for the city of Fremantle. We do want to increase housing. So in that regard, it is disappointing. It's definitely more that could be done here. I'm not sure what constraints, like you said, you went through the process and this is the outcome of being buildable. So nice. It's interesting. But however, having said that, I think it's positive is that we're going to have some diversity in the precinct. It's all apartments. So I think the fact that we've got, whilst this is multiple dwellings, present as 2-storey little townhouse scale. So I think for the precinct as a whole, and it presents well to the streetscape, and it is a nice design. I guess one thing I picked up on the location of the bin store, there's never a good spot for it. But yeah, sort of it would impact amenity of those 2 units that's sort of facing it. But I see one's been designed to accommodate, and you've added a roof as well to minimise the impact on neighbours. So that has been addressed largely. In regards to parking, it's great. There's, from what I could see, I think it is 2 bays per unit, which is great. We do have an issue with parking in the area, and I support removing that condition 11 of the additional visitor bay. And that's all.
Thank you. Further speakers? Member Hyde.
Thank you. I'm supportive of the development, finding it generally consistent with the planning framework. I also note the DRP are generally supportive, and that they wanted more density, height and basement parking, but there is no minimum height in the planning framework. So I can't say that this is underdevelopment in that context. So I'm putting those comments aside in my consideration of this. Basements are certainly expensive to construct, and I think in the context of changing climates and sea levels, perhaps it is judicious not to rely upon them in such proximity to the coast, but that's a personal view. However, I do support this as an addition to the diversity of the housing stock. The matters raised through advertising and the requirements of the planning framework, I think, have been adequately addressed in the RAR. There doesn't seem to be any fundamental impact or issue. Additional details are reasonable to be conditioned and approved prior to the issue of building permit. The minor variations in setbacks and the shortfall of one visitor bay is acceptable. There are no restrictions on maximum parking despite the proximity to the rail station. So the parking is acceptable, albeit in my view, it could be reduced even further given that proximity to the rail station. I think the design generally therefore fits well with the location and the adjacent development existing and planned, and gives that diversity rather than a monolithic wall of everything being exactly the same. So I think that will be aesthetically fine. I would, however, presiding member, like to suggest an amendment to delete condition 13.
Okay. Seeking a seconder for that is Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you. I think, as I raised earlier in my question time, the RAR is quite clear that the port raised no objection. That would normally be the point at which you would introduce a condition of that nature. Concerned. The RAR also suggests that there's no need for restrictions in the area under their prevailing planning framework. So I think it's an unnecessary element to add to this, and I think people are perfectly aware of where they are living, and they can even see the port and in future whatever might remain of the port. So I don't think there's a need for this to be put onto the lot in perpetuity. Thank you.
Councillor Van Dawson is seconder for the amendment.
Nothing to add. That's nice.
Any further speakers on that amendment? Councillor Sullivan.
I won't support this simply because at this stage, the land directly on the opposite side of Walter Place is absolutely chock-a-block full of containers that are port associated, and the movement of containers certainly creates a lot of truck activity, a lot of noise and the like. So there is actual port activity happening directly opposite. That land is not zoned urban. Bird still, and there are matters that are unresolved in terms of lifting that urban bird. I imagine until that is lifted, and for many years after it is lifted, that port activity will probably continue. So I completely understand that in terms of future planning, that it is not needed, but it may well be needed in the lifetime of this development when residents are buying.
Okay, further speakers.
Yeah, look, I agree with Councillor Sullivan. Despite the future plans for the port, which I think are interesting and exciting, there's still 10 or 15 years at least left of active port activity in this area. And I think even though people wouldn't want to know where they're buying and what the environment is, the fact that the city still gets some concerns coming from this area related to that means that reminding people that this is where they are isn't a bad thing. So I think it's probably worthwhile to keep it there as a requirement.
I'm quite happy to support it. I believe that in a way condition 14 can cover off on the rail and road transport noise, and so I don't think it's necessary to have additional section 78 just to deal with the port site itself. Back to the mover.
To go to vote then.
Okay, I'll put that. All in favour for deletion? Against? That's carried 3-2. Thank you.
Further amendment would be to condition 14, to bring that into line with previous decisions of DAPS and the understanding of Section 78 Transfer Land Act, which condition 14 would therefore read, prior to occupation for the development hereby approved, comma, the landowner shall provide consent to a notification pursuant to Section 70A of the Land Transfer Act 1893 being placed on the certificate of title subject lot. The notification is to state as follows. The wording then goes, this lot is in the vicinity of transport corridor, etc., etc. Noise levels may rise or fall over time depending on the type and volume of traffic, and that would close that particular condition. In addition to that, there would be a new advice note that would say condition 14 is not imposing an obligation on the local government. If the local government chooses to lodge a notification under Section 70A, the proponent's obligation is to give their consent to the local government's application and nothing more.
Thank you. Seeking a seconder for that. Member Simon, thank you.
I think we've said this a number of times, but it is our understanding of the interpretation of the Land Act that the obligation or the choice of placing memorial on title sits with the authority rather than with the proponent. The proponent's obligation is to consent to that. It doesn't mean this needs necessarily to follow through. It's subject to the choice or discretion of the local government, and hence the advice note explaining that interpretation further. It's consistent with all the other decisions that we've made over the past 6 months or so in regard to these notifications.
Thank you. Member Simon, seconder.
Look, this is essentially procedural and it fits in with current practice.
Thank you. Any further speakers on that? Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Would you?
Nothing more from me.
Nothing more for the speakers. Member Simon.
Yes, look, I support this development. I think it is an appropriate one for this site and this location. I don't think it is actually under development. And I think it's important that from a planning point of view, recognition is made of the need not only for density, which if you do it fairly crudely means more apartments, but rather the diversity that comes with it, and the fact that this presents as a series of townhouses with an apartment on top really means that the diversity of the demographic diversity here expands dramatically. There are many more people who would be attracted to this townhouse film. We have plenty of data on this than simply apartments. Apartments, when it boils down, have actually a very, very narrow base if you look at the data. So I think from an overall planning point of view, and also from a density point of view and a timing point of view, this is a timely and very good way of approaching this. And I think it's being done in a really skillful fashion. I also think that there is now plenty of evidence coming that in very low-lying areas such as this, the inundation from sea level rise, which I think is becoming more and more inevitable, is a serious issue. So basements in this location, while from a planning point of view they might be attractive, really from an engineering and a long-term point of view, may not be a good idea. So I think that we have no basements in this area, I think is a wise move. So for those reasons, I think this is actually a very good development. I don't think it's underdeveloped. I think it's appropriate for this site, and I think it can be supported.
Thank you. I too fully support the proposal, and I agree with the comments made by Member Syme. It is, I suppose, an underdevelopment of the site, but it is, I think, an appropriate development and a well thought through development in the context of the locality. I note the submissions from the community members. The RIR has addressed most of those as either not being in the remit of this decision-making body or has dealt with it through conditions. The issue which constantly gets raised is the lack of parking and the difficulty of parking in the locality, and the comment that was raised that people purchasing a 2-bed unit with 1 parking bay are not going to leave their second car in the old place, and they'll want 2 parking bays. And while I understand that, I think we're at a stage now where we have to start pushing the TOD approach. In other words, people who buy these units are going to have to accept that they only have 1 parking bay, and there may or may not be street parking. And I guess it's up to the city to manage the street parking so that it's available for all comers in that location. The principle of reducing reliance on private vehicles in this context and it places great reliance on the public transport is appropriate in my view. I agree that development responds well to its location. It's a good design as tested by the Design Advisory Committee, although I know the applicant chose not to accept some of the DAC advice. I think what they've done is more than appropriate, so I'm more than happy to support the application. The units are spacious and functional. They provide good surveillance of the public spaces, and any privacy concerns have been largely dealt with. The landscape plan demonstrates there will be quality landscaping, and I note the RIR comment that there is no need for the public open space due to the proximity of the site to the ocean or the beach and park area. So I support the application fully. Thank you. Back to Councillor Sullivan as the mover.
Thank you, and I thank the panel for your comments, which I support, and I did neglect to emphasise that I also felt that the diversity of what is proposed is certainly welcome in that precinct. There are actually other similar terraces to the north, but they're very limited in number, and they were successful. So that diversity is, I think, important and helps build the diversity in the community that are going to be living there. So that's a positive. On the issue of the parking and the foreshore and the basements, the primary issue in that precinct is it's a foreshore. And it's incredibly busy and the like. And yes, the units generate parking issues, but that tends to simply be clashing with the fact that there's an incredibly popular foreshore reserve that services most of the southern suburbs, the older southern suburbs, all the way through to Canning. And the foreshore reserve isn't big enough to accommodate all that parking, and so that's why we get problems with parking in that area. I don't think it's a direct result of the developments of that area. I'd also emphasise that at the time of subdivision and development, it was at a time when the state coastal planning policy was either in force or in the process of being developed, which came about in part as a result of this site. And the levels that were created were actually created with sea level rise in mind. And so it is one of those first developments that actually has been planned on the basis of sea level rise, albeit the coefficient for sea level rise back then was ridiculously low at 0.43 of a metre instead of the sort of 0.9 of a metre that I think it is now. So the undercroft, I don't think there is a direct problem with building them, but I just wanted to emphasise that. And the last thing I would say is I would think that both the developers and the city should actually challenge Main Roads' approach to this issue. It is actually, I think, important to get access to Walter Place. Main Roads had the opportunity at the time of subdivision very clearly to put in place restrictive covenants. They put in place a restricted covenant. It's clearly shown on the title. It's from X to Y, and X and Y are only on Curtin Avenue. They are not on Walter Place. And I don't believe Main Roads can have it both ways. I mean, either you put a restricted covenant on it and you make it really clear from the outset in land title that you can't have access there, or you don't. So I would encourage both the applicant and the city officers to challenge that and take it all the way, because I strongly believe that access is far better, left in, left out at least, from Walter Place, because it'll be more harmonious and deals with some of the issues that were raised by the community. But all in all, great to see development happening on that side. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends the debate. I'll now put the motion as amended. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Just to move on, no Form 2 applications and no Section 31 matters. So thank you to Councillors Sullivan, Dawson, your attendance, and to the officers from the City of Fremantle.
Very much all for your consideration, paper.
Hi, Michael. Ashley, just confirm you can hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Or is it just yourself this morning?
Yes, it is.
And Nathan, can you hear me okay?
Hi, Secretary. Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Right, we're back online. About to start the City of Vincent part. Welcome to councillors and Wallace joining us. We'll go back to declarations of due consideration. Have all panel members made themselves familiar with Part C of the agenda and Part C related information? Raise hands. Thank you very much. Disclosures of interest. Councillors, did this matter go to a briefing or a council meeting? No. No. Okay. Are there any disclosures of interest? No. Thank you very much. I'm going through presentations, and there are a few presentations from the community. I'll just remind people that your presentations are limited to 3 minutes. When that time is up, I'll let you know, and if you draw to a close then, and panel members may want to ask you questions after your presentation. So going to the first presenter, is it Jun May?
Yes.
Yes, by all means.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to present. My name is Kun Mai, and I'm the owner of 21 Lincoln Street, the property immediately adjoining the proposed development. I wish to make clear that I'm not opposed to the redevelopment, nor to the provision of affordable housing. My concern is whether this proposal achieved appropriate planning outcomes for such a constrained site, having regard to design quality, residential amenity, and the management of impacts on joint properties. The central issue is that the development does not adequately internalize the impact generated by the 7 dwellings. Instead, the key servicing, circulation, and operational areas are all pushed towards the boundary with our property. The bin store, access corridor, reduced setback, limited separation, and reduced parking provisions are not isolated matters. Together, they indicate a proposal that relies on multiple positions to accommodate 7 dwellings on a constrained site. The result is that many of the day-to-day activities generated by the development are all concentrated directly adjacent to our property and in close proximity to our bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen windows, effectively transferring the impact to our home. Given the intended nature of the development, it relies on the ongoing management and the support arrangements, the location of servicing areas, circulation routes, and the communal activity areas becomes even more critical. Good planning should minimize impacts through design, not rely on future management measures to address them. A well-designed development should function appropriately, regardless of who will occupy it. The design review process has also identified concerns relating to amenity, legibility, safety, landscape quality, and the building form outcomes. These concerns stem from the same issues. The development intensity has not been matched by a site layout that adequately manages impact within the development itself. The key question for the panel is whether the proposal has adequately resolved its amenity impacts through design, and whether a reasonable balance has been achieved between development yield and residential amenity. In my view, none has been achieved. For these reasons, I respectfully submit that the proposal should not be approved in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bott. Are there questions of Centre? No, thank you very much. We move to Bruce Dainton.
put timer on, so maybe you can tell me to hurry up. It's fine. Dear DAP members, my name is Bruce Stainton. I'm co-owner and resident of 21 Lincoln Street, and you've just heard from my wife. We also have two boys, adults with us. The property immediately adjoining the proposed development at 19 Lincoln. I support the provision of affordable housing and recognise the importance of increasing housing supply. My concern is not with the intended residents or the principle of affordable housing. Rather, my concern is whether this particular design appropriately manages the impacts generated by 7 dwellings on a constrained site, protecting the amenity of adjoining residents. I wish to focus on a matter that is unique where we live, 21 Lincoln. The proposed development places a pedestrian access corridor along the common boundary between 19 and 21. It's a throughway, and I've talked to the council about this, connecting Lincoln Street to the rear laneway. As a result, pedestrian movement associated with 7 dwellings, visitors, service providers, and deliveries would be concentrated immediately adjacent to our property. Unlike most neighbouring properties, 21 Lincoln Street is already exposed to activity from Lincoln Street out front, White Street at our left, and the rear laneway. This proposal would effectively create activity on 4 sides of our property. The consequence is not simply increased pedestrian traffic, it is the concentration of movement, noise, and day-to-day activity immediately along the boundary of an existing residence. This has implications for privacy, quiet enjoyment, and residential amenity. My concern is that the proposal does not adequately internalise the operational impacts generated by 7 dwellings, 2-bedroom dwellings. Instead, a significant proportion of those impacts are directed towards the common boundary shared with us at 21. The same issue arises with the location of things. That's my alarm. Permission to continue.
Well, for another.
Let's stop that. Okay. I think you've all read it, so thank you for allowing me to present. It's been emotional for us.
Are there any questions of that? Thank you very much.
Sorry, could I just ask a quick one? In regard to the boundary fence between your lot and this proposal, what's the nature of that fence? And have you had any discussions with the proponent about, I guess, increasing the height or having additional protections?
We've had lots of discussions with council. I think Michael might confirm that.
Yeah.
The existing fence is a wooden fence 2 metres high or higher. So I can't see it, I'm not sure. It's wooden, it's pretty handy because there are residents that kink the fence, and that's horrific. At the moment, the plans say colour bond. We've asked for that to be removed from the plans, but they're still there. So, you know, we've got major concerns with just that, but you'll hear from service that and other things.
In terms of the fencing, that I understand that's an issue obviously between you and the adjoining owner as to what sort of fencing goes there.
You would hope that there'd be some sort of agreement on what it is. Uniting West did, or the walk into Johnson with some grants, perhaps from council and government, that they did believe pay for the fence that's there now. But yeah, it's if there's obviously there's different laws that cover fencing, and then it's not even sort of responsibility of council. So
that's right.
We will be obviously having to have further discussions.
Question we can ask the applicant as well. You accept, you're saying that all 7 occupants of all 7 units will be using that walkway. I mean, there are some units which are away from that, and I'd imagine they wouldn't need to use that walkway.
That's the only walkway they can use. How else do they enter the property?
Well, they might drive their car out.
That's the rear.
That's right.
So
they may not need to use the walkway.
Okay, so they could drive in from the rear and enter through the centre. I think there's a centre.
Right.
Okay.
That's not, anyway, I'm just wondering if you understand that it may not be all 7 occupants or occupants that use that walkway or need to use that walkway.
The rear, I'm glad you brought up that. That's permission to talk about further that rear access, because the history of that site is, and Sarah can confirm this later, there was access to the rear of the existing property. At one stage there was a gate there, and through obviously advocating, that was closed because the access through the rear caused problems. And that's coming and going through the rear of the property was a problem then, and it's going to be a problem with the car bays. And it's much better that people enter pedestrian wise or even vehicle wise, in my opinion, from the front only. And so just the car park itself, I'm quite concerned. I appreciate that the pedestrian access won't necessarily come through and along our fence, but the disturbances from the back now, not just for adjoining properties, but for the property to the south of that 16 Wright Street, is going to be huge. I'm surprised they're not here, but that access in there to vehicle and pedestrian is going to be a problem.
Okay. All right. Further questions? No. Thank you very much, Mr. Move on to Sarah Gagliardi.
Morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Gagliardi from 17 Lincoln Street. I'm also speaking on behalf of Anna Gagliardi, 17 Lincoln Street, the owner and co-occupier at 17 Lincoln Street. We both object to this build in its current format. The bulk massing of the 7 units confronts us with a massive wall at both ends of our property. There are severe restrictions to light. Yesterday I was in the backyard at about 2 o'clock trying to understand what a 6.3 metre high wall at that point means in terms of sun access, and it was completely blocked at 2. So I'm guessing it'll be restricted to just a short window during the midday sun in winter, where we will have access to solar exposure. The front is much worse. The fact that we will have these high walls, even though it's compliant with the R codes that accounts for the density, it basically blocks us in on one side. It's very obtrusive. It's ironic. I read in the reports something about a tree transplant in order to preserve what trees are on site. The irony in this current form is that the blocking of the sun, especially in winter, by such an obtrusive, massive wall will prevent sunlight access to a tree that we have in the front, which will be a slow death for that tree. Tree canopy is in severe short supply generally in Perth as a rule. And on that street too, the shrub-like plants that the City of Vincent has put in provides very little shade for pedestrian walkability during the intense heat of summer sun. Aesthetically, it doesn't fit in with the scale and rhythm and the heritage outlay of the entire neighbourhood. Highgate is such a small and unique neighbourhood compared to any other neighbourhoods in the metro area. The bulk form, which essentially tries to justify an economy of scale to maximise the benefits of the cost of this build and its purpose, really compromises on the amenity in the area, not just to us, but even the residents within the development site as well. You only have to consider existing areas of new development like Woolworths, a corner site, Silver Chain, again, a corner site, even the apartments on Lord Street, again, a corner site. That placement fits high density development without compromising what Highgate is. I'd like to point out that the City of Vincent local planning strategy and the residential zone objectives under LPS 72 speak of high density residential development that is cognizant of the residential character dwellings within the area. It speaks to enhancing amenity and character of the residential neighbourhood by encouraging the retention of existing housing stock and ensuring new development is compatible with the established area. This bulk mass does not fit with a compatibility to the area in its design. It severely impacts by way of being an obtrusive eyesore to the rhythm and scale of Lincoln Street and the small area of Highgate as well. The other fact is that the materials used, the colouring, the reflection of light in the heat of summer onto our adjoining property will intensify the heat load. The ColourBond fencing also will intensify the heat load. And the fact that you have placed in the designs a courtyard right up against our fence line where our veranda is leaves no privacy for us or the resident in that courtyard to be able to enjoy.
Sorry, could you address?
I beg your pardon.
Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, we've lost complete privacy. The existing house, in an unfortunate quirk of design, butts their veranda against ours. When there is no wind, you can hear a pin drop. There is absolutely no privacy. That has been worsened by the amendment to the proposal where you've butted right up against the fence line with only a metre setback between our fence and the house. It's a severe compromise to amenity for both parties at both properties.
Glani, that's 6 minutes. You finished, have you?
I have, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Are there questions of the presenter? I suppose you would have been aware that this has been zoned R80 for quite some time. From what you're saying, it's almost impossible to have developed any higher density development in that location.
No, I disagree. My issue is with the mass of 7 separate units. If it were to have been sold to an individual owner who wanted to build a 3-story house, that would meet the R zone requirements and density. The fact that there are 7 separate what you're calling units, which effectively look like 2 rooms built on top of each other by the way that they've been designed, makes it quite obtrusive in terms of how it presents to the scale and rhythm of the street as well as the neighbourhood. I'm not opposed to, I understand the R zoning rating and that it promotes density living. Just the current form in its bulk and mass, as my neighbours have presented, in the restriction it imposes on the creativity in the design, forcing a compromise to amenity by virtue of an economy of scale, because they're trying to maximise the most out of a $3.5 million budget in order to justify the build for its purpose, is very limited in terms of what it can offer the neighbourhood, the surrounding, the adjoining properties and the residents within.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I did have a question. Sure. You said you objected to the colour and finishes of some of the buildings. Like which facade and which colour in particular did you take issue?
There is a beigey, creamy coloured colours on the colour scale that would reflect light quite intensely. My neighbour on 15 Lincoln Street has part of her wall that sits right in front of my bedroom is white in colour. The reflection from that is quite intense during summer. And so my lived experience with that makes me anticipate that that's what I'm going to be dealing with in that colour scheme for number 19 Lincoln Street.
You'd have a preference for a darker colour on the eastern elevation?
A darker colour would absorb more light and reflect less. Yes.
Okay, further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Move to the applicant now, Nathan Maas and Michael Chester. Nathan, over to you. You've got your time allocated.
Yes, thank you, presiding member. So good morning, my name is Nathan Maas, Senior Planner at Planning Solutions. I'm joined today by both the proponent Michael as well as designer Jean Paulo. If it's okay with the presiding member, before I talk to the planning merits of the proposal, if I pass over to Michael, who will provide a brief overview of Uniting, and Jean Paulo, who will talk to the design of the development and the refinement made during the assessment. And then all 3 of us will be available to answer questions following my deputation after.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair and panel members. I'm Michael Chester, co-CEO of Uniting WA, and I'm accompanied by Ingrid Van Dorsen, our project manager at Uniting. We're here to give a brief presentation about Uniting and our housing management services, as well as the community engagement for this project. We'd be happy to answer questions from panel members following the presentation. Uniting WA is a not-for-profit community services provider that supports thousands of Western Australians each year experiencing a range of complex challenges throughout the Perth metro area and the Great Southern. Our mission is to inspire people, enliven communities, and confront injustice. Uniting is a registered community housing provider that manages its housing assets in accordance with the Community Housing Regulatory Framework obligations. We provide specialized property and tenancy management services based on a supportive landlord model. Uniting has delivered supported accommodation at 19 Lincoln Street for over 20 years, and we're excited about the opportunities this new development provides for us to continue that work in a fit-for-purpose designed building that reflects contemporary approaches to supporting vulnerable people. The property is owned by Uniting and will continue to be managed by our housing services team, who manage over 300 properties across Perth. The proposed Lincoln Street development is intended to help respond to Western Australia's housing and homelessness crisis by providing supported community housing in an area where it's needed, close to public transport, everyday shopping, and existing support services. Should the development be approved, Uniting confirms that the site will operate under a formal operational management plan, addressing tenancy allocation and cohort mix, on-site or dedicated housing management team, incident response and escalation procedures, and engagement and communication with neighbors. Should the DAP have any outstanding concerns regarding the future management of the property, we would not object to a condition of approval regarding an operational management plan being a necessity, as we intend to implement this in any case. Regarding community engagement, Uniting WA has complied with all statutory requirements associated with the development application process, including public advertising and providing a response to the concerns raised in the summary of submissions. We've also engaged with the neighbours directly following a complaint received by Uniting in relation to the development application, hosting a meeting with one of the neighbours, Bruce, to talk through his concerns. While we acknowledge residents would have preferred earlier engagement, it's always been our intention to engage with neighbours as we develop the operational plans for the property following development approval. In closing, Uniting recognises the importance of balancing the delivery of much-needed community housing with respect for surrounding neighbourhoods, and we share a commitment to constructive engagement with surrounding residents. We've taken the concerns raised by neighbours seriously, and we're committed to addressing them through appropriate governance, management, and genuine engagement practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll continue on then, Michael. Sorry, not Michael, Nathan.
To Jean Paulo, sorry.
I'm John Paulo Cugnali from G Living, architect and builder, and I'm speaking in support of the application. From the outset, this project's been about delivering a high quality residential outcome on a site that's appropriately zoned in a high density living, while also responding carefully to the character and amenity of Lincoln Street. So the proposal is providing 7 two-bedroom homes that will contribute to the affordable and accessible housing solution in a location that is well connected to services, public transport, and the surrounding urban area. For us, this is a real and positive community outcome. We also recognise that good planning is not just about density, it's about the density, quality, amenity, management, and how development sits within its setting. This is why we've worked constructively with the City of Vincent and the design review panel and people's concerns throughout the assessment process. The project was presented to the design review on more than one occasion, and we took that process seriously. The feedback received was not treated as a formality, it directly informed improvements to the proposal. In response to the feedback from the design review panel and the city, we made meaningful refinements to the proposal to deliver a better design outcome for the site, the neighbours, and the streetscape. This included reducing the extent of boundary walls, reviewing and improving the material palette, providing more usable outdoor living areas, and strengthening the landscape response across the site. In addition, we are working with artists as part of the art contribution to really make this a development special. These changes demonstrate that we listened, responded, and worked constructively with the city and the design review panel to arrive at a more balanced and respectful outcome. It is also important to point out sustainability and long-term affordability also being key considerations in the design. The project incorporates practical ESD initiative that will improve the performance of the dwellings and reduce ongoing living costs for future residents. To name some, this includes double glazing to improve the thermal comfort and acoustic performance, solar panels to offset the energy use, 150mm insulated roof panels, enhanced wall insulation, and improved natural ventilation to reduce reliance on mechanical heating and cooling. The design also responds to passive solar principles through good access to natural light, considered window placement, shaded outdoor areas, and the ability for dwellings to achieve improved airflow. These measures are not just technical upgrades. They directly support better comfort, lower energy demand, and more affordable day-to-day living once the homes are occupied. The streetscape presentation was also improved. The front dwellings address Lincoln Street with habitable room windows, front courtyards, the adoption of red brick boundary walls, landscaping, and passive surveillance. The facade and front boundary treatments were amended to better relate to the established character of the street from our discussions with the design review panel, including the use of materials and fencing that provide a softer and more respectful interface. So amenity has been central to the design response. Each dwelling has private outdoor space, landscaping is provided through the site, the existing mature tree is retained, and additional small trees are proposed. Parking is located at the rear and accessed from the right of way, reducing the visual impact on Lincoln Street. We acknowledge that there's been community concern and we respect that. But we've also believed the final proposal demonstrates a genuine response to those concerns through design, landscaping, management, and conditions. The outcome before the panel is not the same scheme that comes to the process. It is better, more resolved proposal because the collaboration between Living, the city, the design review panel, and the project team. In our view, the project delivers much needed housing, improves the use of an appropriate design site, contributes positively to the streetscape, and provides a managed, sustainable, and socially beneficial residential outcome. And for that, I'd like you to support it. Thank you.
Do you, Nathan? You've got a minute.
Oh, shoot. All right. Thank you, presiding member, and thank you, Michael and John Polo. Look, firstly, I'd like to thank the city's officers for their diligent assessment and recommendation. As discussed by John Polo, we have worked collaboratively with the officers, refining the proposal following their feedback, as well as following the inputs of the DRP and the community. So broadly, we consider the conditions to be reasonable and acceptable. However, as outlined in my presentation summary, we do request the deletion of condition 2.3 and amendment to condition 12. Before discussing these, I'd like to step through some of the merits of the proposal. So the development has been designed contextually and sympathetically to its surrounds. This is achieved with a low scale and soft built form and materiality, the selective use of landscaping, including increased tree canopy coverage, as well as the rear vehicle access. Whilst we do propose minor variations, they have been demonstrated to be acceptable, mitigating all impacts to neighbours. Importantly, the development sits within the ultimate development potential allowed under the planning framework. This ensures the development is respectful to the existing prevailing residential character and scale, whilst providing contemporary, sustainable, and livable residences. In respect to condition 2.3, whilst we do appreciate the intent of the condition, relocating the condensers would be difficult to achieve within the context of the site and unnecessarily duplicates condition 2.2, which already requires the condensers to be screened. The condensers will be screened and also hidden by the front fence and landscaping in accordance with the R code provisions. Whilst condition 2.3 does propose to require the condensers to not be visible from internal common spaces, we note this leaves limited space on site which this could be achieved. That would also be acceptable from an acoustic perspective.
Nathan, you'll need to start winding up.
No worries. All right. And then just in respect to condition 12, we again appreciate the intent of the condition and don't oppose the condition requiring the development to be in accordance with the Lodge Environmentally Sustainability Design Report. However, it's unclear what exceeding minimum practice for the single initiative is. So as per my presentation summary, do request that the condition be amended. So overall, the gentle density uplift for the site provides critical community housing in an area close to public transit, amenities, and the Perth city centre. So thank you for your time, and we'll be pleased to answer any questions.
All right, thank you for that. Questions of the presenters?
I'll go first then. I guess we heard a bit about potential impacts from this to the lot at 21 Lincoln Street. Are you satisfied that a 1.8 colour bond fence provides appropriate separation for noise and other potential impacts across that lot boundary? Was any consideration given to a higher or masonry fence?
No, thank you for the question. And yeah, I do acknowledge the community's comments. So the design of the development was refined during the assessment process. So originally we did have a portion of the building with a nil setback to this boundary, but following DRP feedback, we considered it was more appropriate to have it shifted further into the site, which then provided an increased setback and then having the walkway along this boundary. Whilst I do appreciate the community's comments, again, I do note that primarily access will be either from the street for the front dwellings or from the rear dwellings to the car park. So not all 7 units will have the use of that common walkway all the time. Look, if it is during the construction, as agreeable with the neighbour that we do need to replace the fence or upgrade it, that's something that we can negotiate with them, and Uniting is happy to do that. But the current 1.8 metre fence, yes, we consider it acceptable from an acoustic perspective and an amenity perspective. Also note that there's no overlooking or overshadowing from the development into 21 Lincoln Street.
Further questions?
Could you just talk a little bit more about that with respect to the bin store in particular? I think that's pushed pretty hard up against this boundary, except, someone walking down a walkway might not be particularly impactful, but if you've got 7 units banging bin lids, doing this kind of thing on the regular, hard up against a lot boundary, do you think that's appropriately managed through this design and this fence?
No, yes, again, we did workshop numerous locations for the bin store. So having the pickup from Lincoln Street necessitated the bin store being closer to Lincoln Street. While 7 dwellings is an increase from the existing dwelling, it's not that much of an increase to what would be appropriate or normal under a residential context. It's minimal upgrade to what would be there currently. So yeah, in terms of impact to neighbours, it would be quite small compared to what would be there currently.
Sorry, Nathan, can you just elaborate on that a bit? I don't understand, coming from basically a single house, and I know there's probably more occupants in there, but the bin store is not in that location, is it, at the present time?
I'm not too sure where it is currently, but in a residential context, most people would have their bins relatively within this location, within the sort of front area.
But do they do in this situation now?
No, I'm not sure where it is currently, no. But I'm just saying that any other development scenario, it would be likely within this location.
Perhaps if Ingrid.
The bin store actually originally was proposed in a different location within the site, and the design review panel gave us feedback to move it. So we did. It was put to the front of the boundary for operational purposes, just for that convenient access to the street and what have you. We felt putting it at the rear of the property was, it's just typically bin stores are at the front for convenient waste collection. And
I'm sorry to the members of the public, can't ask questions of you at this stage, so thank you.
That's why it was put. It was in response to the design review panel.
Sorry, on that, do we know if the council does a rear lane bin?
I don't know. I don't believe so.
Do we know from the council whether they do a rear lane bin collection?
Sorry, no, sorry. We'll get to the officers later and ask them. So, further questions of the applicant?
Sorry to bang on about the bins. I guess we talked a little bit about.
Hang on. Sorry.
He's still.
Oh, sorry.
I'm still going.
I was looking around.
Roll.
Apologies. I guess has been any, and I think I'm using this word correctly, assessment of the olfactory impacts of having the bins there? I guess, 7 bins is an intensification for one. We only do a fortnightly traceable waste pickup in Vincent. 7 red bins there for up to a fortnight as you're walking into lot 21 might be a reasonable smell impact if it's just a 1.8 colour bond fence that's proposed.
So I think I have to confirm with the waste management plan, but it is only 5 red bins. Still an increase from the single, of course. If necessary, the bin store can be roofed, which would be standard practice to ensure the mitigation of from smell.
Okay. Further questions, Councillor Wallace?
That's me for now. Thanks.
Stage.
Thank you. It was to the gentleman who spoke about operational management. We have a copy of the parking management and development management plan. There's some detail in there about managing residents, etc. How are you determining that would adequately deal with some of the issues raised by the community? And how do you distinguish between that and what you've offered in your presentation as an operational management plan? How do you see them being different? What elements would be in an operational plan?
You want to just go back to the desk?
Sure. Actually, we'll both come because it'll be a joint response here. So broadly speaking, we put operational management plans into all of the the dwellings that have shared occupancy in our portfolio of dwellings around the metropolitan area. They're different to the parking and other management plans in the sense that they involve the service elements of support that we provide to people in those facilities and expectations around the behavior of people that we have in those facilities, as well as our response to those behaviors.
Okay, because that's touched upon in the DMP that's attached, but you're saying it would go into greater detail. Is that correct?
Yes.
Ingrid's got experience in.
Yeah, so I will prepare the parking and development management plan for this application. So yes, we're not the reason. So yes, we would comply with both, but operational management plan is more detailed on the service program. So it details the type of people, the cohort that would be living there and the service model we'd be providing. And we often provide that to local governments in support of our
okay, because the PMP and the DMP at the moment has a phrase in there which says, you know, visitors are the responsibility of the residents. So to what extent would the operational management plan also cover off on those aspects?
visitors. Yeah, they're just like normal residents, so they could have visit. Yeah, that's not a controlled thing for our residents and all, like visitors.
Okay.
But they're just provided as support.
Okay, and in terms of occupancy, you've got a register obviously of who's occupying. So if visitors needed to stay over or whatever, how would that be accommodated?
Well, that would come down to, it's a service program specific. So we don't know yet who's going in there. It would be subject to external funding. So for us as a process, we would get a DA approval first. It's kind of like a bit of a first milestone before we can look at, okay, well, who would be best suited and seek the external funding for that. So it depends on the people going.
That might be
the level of support.
The operational management.
It will be covered.
Yes, it would be. Yes.
Okay, that's good. Thank you. I think that was my only question.
If I could follow up then, if the building manager is off-site, then how do they respond to an issue that's occurring?
It will be covered in our operational management plan, but it is also subject to Enviro Health Act, a lodging house certificate. So typically a development like this, I'm anticipating we need to apply for a lodging house certificate from the City of Vincent, an annual environmental health registration, so that
There is an issue on site.
Oh yes, sorry.
And it was off-site.
Sorry, and under that act, we do have to nominate a caretaker or a responsible person who is on site at all times, but also within our operational management plan, we have safety and security measures. Residents would have typically, again, it depends on the service program, but we offer after hours support to all our housing and residents. And yeah, there's a process in place, and then for emergencies, obviously call police just like anywhere, and that sort of thing. And we're required, but we will have CCTV and security on this site as well. Yes, there's someone a phone call away, and we're generally happy to provide that information to neighbours as well, that they can, but again, depend. Yeah.
Okay. In terms of the fencing along there, are you prepared to, or how far are you prepared to go with negotiating with the neighbour to determine an appropriate fence?
I'd be happy to have that discussion, and apologies, I wasn't aware of that being an issue, and also paint colours. I mean, we can look at that. I'm not quite sure on the paint colours, but if it is an issue, happy to look at that. Yeah, definitely. Obviously, subject to our budget constraints, we are subject to funding constraints and what have you, and space on the site, like colour. Yeah, but yes, very happy to have that conversation. We'll have a look at that.
and especially around the bin store. Yeah, noting, yeah, we've acknowledged the community's the issues raised today and happy to look at it.
Further questions? Yes, councillor.
Can I say thank you for acknowledging the query from the resident about the reflection of light and the paint colours and things, and I'm happy to hear that you're prepared to chat to them about that. That was my first question. My second one was about the public art. You mentioned that you're working with artists, so is it safe to say that you're going with the delivering a public art project as opposed to the cash in lieu payment? And have you worked anything further with that?
It's only sort of, I guess, more concept, you know, as you start to think through. So unfortunately, I don't just think about tomorrow, I think about what we need to do in 6 months' time. So, and these things do take time. So it's just sort of starting to develop ideas and, you know, get that in order like we've done on some of the other projects. So it's just sort of trying to, you know, I only believe in making more of an amenity. And so that's sort of, I guess, just a developing idea, you know, so it's all, I guess, chat, you know, until you actually got to submit something and put it through the council process, then I guess there's, you know, times that will gauge at the relevant time.
Sure. So, okay, so it's safe to say you're going to do your own project. May I just encourage you to really work that into your plans, because that can be a real asset to you. Thank you.
Member Hyde.
The bin store design, the waste management plan, which needs to be implemented according to the conditions of approval, says that the bin store area is to be enclosed and screened from view of the street. What do you understand enclosed to be meaning?
Having heard, I just thought the screening fence.
It says enclosed. It says enclosed.
Please.
Enclosed from view, so essentially it's fenced around. So we have to be more.
No, it says enclosed and screened. So two separate elements, enclosed and screened from view of the street.
Well, I consider, I guess, enclosed, not necessarily having a lid on the top.
Okay, so I might ask the city for what their interpretation of that is, because I think that's actually quite important. Okay, thank you.
Further questions?
The two-story wall on the eastern boundary, that's a fibre cement cladding, is that correct?
Yep.
Paint finish?
Yep.
Okay. And we don't know what colour paint we've got at the moment?
I think it's got surf mist, I think. So
I beg your pardon?
I think it was surf mist on the plans.
Surf mist.
That's white.
That's
Like
white.
White, sort of darker white, sort of with a hint of grey in it.
White with a hint of grey. Okay.
It's white.
That's white. Okay, that's based. That's
for that to be dark and
that'll have a morning sun, won't it? That'll be morning sun. Okay, so you're prepared to discuss that with the?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you. If I may, can we ask Mr. Dainton what fence he would prefer on his boundary?
May.
Double brick. Double. We know there's going to be a lot of noise coming from that.
So a masonry boundary fence would be
2.5 meters high.
2.5 meters might be a bit of a stretch, but
all right. Well, you've asked the question.
okay. Thank you. Thank you. No, I understand.
All right. Further questions of the applicant?
Just have a quick one. Thank you, Chair. Just about this building manager, what other responsibilities would a building manager in your organisation have? So they'd be responsible for these 7 dwellings. What else are they responsible for in their day-to-day? How much attention would this on them?
It's part of a portfolio of properties that we own, so it wouldn't, building manager wouldn't necessarily be on site, but available. So maintenance.
So are they responsible for, say, 100 properties or 20 properties?
More, it'd be closer to probably 15. Yeah, we've got a lot of community housing. Most of those are individual units that are managed through the community housing team, whereas this would be considered more of a facility development, if you like, because of the combined nature of the units. So fall under a different management process than individual units that are head lease from Department of Communities, for instance. Because we own this property, so we're responsible for far more, a higher level of maintenance and care to the property.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so like the building manager might be responsible for 15 properties, and this is considered one property or 7 properties? Like counting one.
7 properties, but 1 development.
Okay. And they're responsible for 15 developments?
At most.
But there's also right. There is operational management and building. So we have facility like asset management and tenancy management, as well as operational support. So we actually, it's actually across the organisation. We have different teams. Housing.
Okay, that's an important clarification. Thanks. So if there was a complaint about behaviour at a particular unit, that wouldn't go to the building manager, that would go to the operational manager. Okay, sorry. Well, thank you for that clarification. Yeah, because that's what I was trying to get to. What other responsibilities would such an operational manager have? Like how many units would an operational manager be responsible for?
Part of a service program, and we, recruit as needed with it. Yeah, it depends on the nature, but yeah, it depends on the needs.
30 beds across probably 7 locations, roughly. 30 to 40 beds across 7 locations.
That's managerial, and then there's a team, support team.
Okay, further questions? Further questions? No. Thank you very much for that. We'll move to Michael at the City. Michael, there's probably no need for a total presentation on the project from you. You've heard some of the issues raised. Do you have any initial comments on that, or you have to go straight to question?
Thank you, presiding member. I have a few comments that I would like to make just in regard to the applicant's presentation on the conditions, if that's okay. Thank you. So in regard to condition, sorry, let me go back to my notes, 2.3 being, in summary, a double up of condition 2.2. I'd just like to advise the purpose for the separate condition 2.3 is because the air conditioning enclosure or condensers are actually shown on the plans. So condition 2.2 is sort of the catch-all condition that says these things must be out of view. But where something's shown on the plans, that would then be considered approved as part of the application. Therefore, we've included a specific condition on the condensers for that to be addressed subsequently. In relation to condition, condition 12, the R-Codes Volume 2 talks about, is the environmental sustainability section, talks about specific measures that could be considered in addition to or exceeding minimum standards. So that is the basis for which we would consider appropriate provision for satisfying that condition. So we do consider that is certain and has a reference to the R-Codes. Then just finally, unfortunately, I've been on leave for the last few days, and I was catching up on emails this morning, and I received an email from Gianpaolo, the applicant, in relation to the plans. He noticed that the plans that were provided to the city on the 8th of June, the site plans showed the overlap of the units 1 and units 2 on the 2nd floor. However, the individual floor plans that show the natural ventilation did not also show that that overlap. So that was brought to my attention this morning when I returned to work. I think that it's probably obviously it'd be ideal to have the correct plans approved as part of this application, though I think that there is some wiggle room because the regulations do allow for internal modifications that don't materially impact the external of the building. So it wouldn't necessarily be a problem, but I just wanted to bring that to the panel's attention as soon as it came to my attention.
just straight away, Michael, are you, which one are you assuming, the overlap or the non-overlap is the latest version?
So the correct version shows the overlap. However, the overlap wasn't then brought through to the individual floor plans within the application package.
Okay, because the basis of determining this as a multiple dwelling is that there is
The overlap, that's correct.
over. Perhaps can we?
Yeah, on page or plan set A1-05G, the units 1 and 2 first floor plans should show a portion of overlap within the bedroom that's on the left-hand side of those plans, which is what is shown in the overall site plans.
It does. But are you saying, Michael, that in the R13 response where you've listed the plans, that the plan that's listed there as have you listed that plan?
Yeah, that's correct. So as I mentioned, unfortunately, I was on some personal leave, unexpectedly returning today. So I didn't write the R13. However, reviewing, and at the time that was correct. However, when I saw the email from the applicant this morning indicating that this plan wasn't updated when amended plans were sent to the city, that plan set would be correct. It's still labelled as the A1-05, but the ones in the agenda doesn't show the overlap in that particular plan set, but it does in the overall floor plans above.
Okay.
The ones that we have here show an overlap.
That's right, but
there's an inconsistency in the plan. So A1-03 shows the overlap. A1-05 does not show the overlap.
So that's one received 8th of June 2026.
That's correct.
So that needs to be changed.
That's correct. I have a copy that has been stamped up as amended plans and with today's date that I could forward through to the DAP Secretariat if you would like me to.
Just need the latest date. What did this list refer to? What date?
22nd of June.
Okay, received 22nd of June.
That's an administrative.
Okay, sure. I can send that after the meeting.
All right, thank you. Questions of the
Councillor. Thanks, Chair. The environmental health permit around the lodging house was a new one for me, and that's not a planning consideration. That is purely an environmental health post this decision requirement. Can you talk me through our policy and how we approach these kind of issues a little bit?
Sure. Thank you, Councillor Wallace. That is actually a new one for me as well. You're correct in saying that it's not part of the planning process. That is true. It's not something that I am familiar with. However, there is evidently some regulations that deal with lodging houses and applicable permits following a planning approval. Unfortunately, though, I haven't got information on what that would include.
The question? Yes, Councillor.
There was a question about the right of way, the rubbish collection, and if that's available through the council on the right of way. Do you know anything more about that?
Thank you, Councillor Warner. So the city doesn't offer waste collection from that particular right of way for two reasons. Firstly, the right of way is a privately owned right of way, which is owned by the adjoining landowners for the extent of that right of way. So the city doesn't have the ability to access it. Secondly, the right of way is 3 meters in width, which is too narrow for our waste trucks to be able to maneuver.
Hyde.
I've got quite a few, Michael. Setback considerations, we heard from applicants, and I think there were others from presenters, pardon me, and I think there were other submissions that the new development was too close, that those setbacks were inappropriate. However, in the RAR, it seems to meet with the requirements of the planning frameworks and the codes. How did you assess it?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to clarify. So there is a setback variation. The way we calculate our setbacks is measuring the average setbacks of the adjoining properties. Now, that creates a technical variation in this instance, requiring a setback of about 7.5 meters from memory. The proposed setback is less than that. So then we would consider it against the applicable design principles and local housing objectives. That allows us to consider the proposed setback in the context of the wider street, which has quite a varied setback for the remainder of the street on both sides of the street. So some of the dwellings on the northern side of Lincoln Street are set back about 2 meters and much closer to the front boundary. And then along the southern side of Lincoln Street, which is where this property sits, there are some varied setbacks. The greatest setbacks are actually the houses on either side of this particular site, which is why there's such a substantial setback requirement. But we considered that, taking into consideration the entire streetscape, a reduced setback was appropriate.
Okay, thank you. And similarly with overshadowing, the RAR and the DRP suggests that there's no impact from overshadowing. We've heard some concerns around that element. How again have you assessed?
Yeah, so being an R80 density code, there is no specific percentage outlined in volume 2 for an overshadowing requirement. That being said, we still need to take into consideration what impact the shadows would have on the neighbouring property. We acknowledge that there are some impacts on that northern interface of the dwelling, which is set back about 1 or 1.5 metres from the boundary. So there would be some impacts from the existing fencing that would result in overshadowing to those habitable rooms. This would increase the extent of that overshadowing. However, we also acknowledged that the main outdoor living area is quite largely has a large degree of access to natural light and ventilation throughout the year, and that the southern site didn't have solar PV that was impacted by the overshadowing.
Thank you. In terms of the applicant's presentation, they talked about the opportunity to have an operational management plan. We had attached the parking management and development management plan, which is a subject of a condition. Do you see there being sufficient head of power to require an operational management plan for this type of development? And if so, how would you suggest that that be conditioned?
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Member. No, I don't believe there is a head of power for such a condition, which is why, as part of our request for further information, we sought further details around how the development operation would be managed insofar as it relates to variations to planning requirements. So in this instance, the development seeking a reduction in the number of car parking bays, and the justification for that was the nature of the development wouldn't require such a number of car parking bays that would be required under the R codes, because the way it operates would allow it to have less bays to satisfy its needs. So the city requested the parking management plan and development management plan that helped provide us with certainty that a reduced car parking requirement would be managed appropriately. However, the land use for this application is multiple dwellings, and multiple dwellings, we wouldn't typically be putting conditions on around how that would operate under most arrangements, unless there was a particular aspect of the development from a planning perspective that required us to do so. And we don't believe there is in this instance.
Okay, and that's due to scale, presumably.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay. Condition 13, which refers to the waste management plan, requires that all aspects of that waste management plan be implemented. I drew the applicant's attention to the word enclosed. The bin store design is recommended to be enclosed and screened from the street. How does the city interpret that word enclosed? And in relation to the concerns of neighbours around odour, etc., do you believe that the waste management plan might need to be revisited to take into account odour impacts?
Thank you. So I'll answer the first part of that question first. So I would take a similar, I guess I was making an assumption on what you consider enclosed to be, but that to include a roof. Our waste guidelines, which are available on our website, does talk about waste storage facilities needing to be undercover and designed not to permit stormwater to enter the enclosure. So I take a similar position to you. I don't believe that the condition needs to change, and I think that the waste management plan is still acceptable because the condition and the waste management plan talks about enclosure, so the plans could show that. The second part to your question, I believe that the having it enclosed as per our waste guidelines, and which was the advice that we received from our waste department, would address odour. However, should there be odour issues, health local law does deal with that from a nuisance perspective, and we can undertake environmental health, I guess, compliance action to address that if there's an issue.
Okay, thank you. Condition 2.1 relates to boundary fencing and talks to brick and face brick and materials and so forth. Which walls do you regard that to relate to? Does that distinguish between those new ones versus what's already existing, or did you envisage that boundary fencing would be of that nature?
No, so condition 2.1 relates only to boundary walls that form part of the structure of the buildings. It's not in reference to dividing fences.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Condition 2.3, which has been queried by the applicant, and you provided us earlier with your rationale for a condition which talks to things on the plan. However, that condition suggests that the air conditioning units be relocated and screened. Could that be relocated or screened?
Yes, absolutely. I'd be more than happy with that as an amendment.
Thank you, because I think relocated requires a complete redesign. So
yeah, and I also acknowledge that if the condensers are relocated on the roof where they're not visible, then screening them would be a little bit redundant as well.
Right, and that creates other impacts from being on the roof too. So, and just remind me, condition 12, which the applicant provided alternate wording, were you or were you not comfortable with that? Did you wish to stay with the one that you'd previously provided, or were you comfortable with the applicant's rewording?
Look, I would prefer to stay with our usual wording, which is consistent with other applications that the DAP has seen for the purpose of being consistent. However, if the DAP's of the mind to amend that condition, then we would prefer for the applicant's amended wording to be included, then no condition at all.
I see. Okay. And my last question, please, presiding member, is in your R13 response, and specifically to the question around statutory declaration associated with the Public Art 11.1, 11.2, I think you said there could be alternate wording, but you didn't provide any alternate wording. How would you suggest the DAP approach that?
Sorry, I'm just going back to the R13. Just bear with me. Yes, okay. Sorry, panel, you wouldn't mind just bearing with me for a moment. Where are we?
I think it was query 5.
Yeah, no, I found the query. So I'm just putting both the condition and the query onto my screen so I can provide you with a response. Sure. So perhaps I could maybe just further elaborate on the response that the city provided in the first instance. Is that okay, Deputy Presiding Member?
Yes, I'm just don't understand your response. So
Sure. So there's I guess two parts for the public art conditions that we have. So 11.1 and 11.2. 11.1 seeks to have a statutory declaration. Simply, it's essentially just a indication from the applicant whether or not they are intending on undertaking the public art contribution themselves or providing a cash in lieu. We don't ask as part of that statutory declaration for them to provide any information on what that artwork will be or put it through the public art process. It's simply understanding whether or not they'll be doing it or we will be doing it. Condition 2 then deals with the delivery of that art, where the applicants chosen option 1 under the first part of that condition. We could look to amend the wording of 11.1 to simply let me have a look.
Would it be in the event that option 2 is chosen?
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I would suggest as well. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Michael, for all those questions and responses. I don't have anything else. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Other questions?
No, I haven't covered.
So Wallace.
Chair, and I'm just back on the lodging house. I guess from my impressions, it does meet the definition of a lodging house under the Health Act. Does that mean the Health Act should be at least a due regard document within this assessment and decision today?
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. So we would consider the information that we consider as part of a planning application is outlined in Clause 67 of the planning regulations. It talks about us having to consider everything that is essentially a planning matter, which is derived from the Planning and Development Act. The health legislation that you're referring to, although relevant to the operation of the development in the future, is not a planning legislation and therefore doesn't form part of our assessment. So, for example, when we undertake our planning assessments, we consider noise, but we consider that from the impact of amenity or the impact of noise on the development from, say, road or rail, which is outlined in state planning policy. There is no planning head of power or framework that would require the planning assessment to take in consideration the lodging house permit from under the legislation that you're referring to.
I'm just on our City of Vincent guidelines for lodging houses. Thank you for that response, by the way. And it does seem to contain a lot of items that I would consider planning items. So requirements around location and format of bin stores, number of bathrooms and kitchens per person, the kind of stuff that I think can't be dealt with post-development. So yeah, you know, brief read through this, it's probably compliant with a lot of this, but yeah, I just have reservations that if a lodging permit is going to be required for the operation or for the intended operation of this development, a lot of the requirements that Vincent has in issuing such a permit won't be able to be changed post-development without a Form 2.
Sure. So I guess it's important to draw it back to what's being applied for here. The application is for multiple dwellings, land use. It's not for a lodging house or another type of development use class. So we've assessed this application as we would any other multiple dwelling application. If there are other requirements from other legislation that needs to be met, then that's the onus is on the applicant or the proponent to deal with that subsequent to a planning approval. It's not unlike say a childcare centre, which has other legislation that's governs the number of children or the size of play spaces, where they have to get approvals or permits from the relevant authorities subsequent to a planning approval. It's similar in this instance.
Okay, thank you. I think we'll have to have a look at this outside of DAF as well.
Further questions? No. Thank you, Michael. We'll move then to the item. We have a published recommendation for approval with conditions and advice notes. I'm going to seek a mover and a seconder for the published recommendation. Is there a mover for that? All right, thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Warner, thank you. All right.
I am comfortable with supporting the application. I find it to be consistent generally with the planning framework. Multiple dwellings are a permitted use. And whilst there are a number of elements requiring discretion, these have been considered in great detail in the RAR and have been resolved. Alternate plans have been provided, or they are subject to conditions of approval requiring some minor modification, which doesn't substantially change the development, or as we've heard, required some explanation so that we all understood the interpretation that the city was placing on those conditions, which I find to be very helpful. This is an area in transition under the planning framework. The R codes of R80 allow for a 3-storey development. So while the application does introduce a higher intensity of development, it is having some regard to the interface with the adjoining properties and also that R80 density coding. The design review panel has been largely supportive. Now, whilst some elements are coloured orange, that means that they're pending further information or that additional information should be provided. It doesn't mean that the DRP did not support development or did not find the development capable of upholding those elements of good design. Those matters have been identified and can be conditioned, and certainly the matter of materials, I believe that condition requires input further from the design review panel at the point that those materials are selected. And certainly all those conditions require input and collaboration with the city officers. There are some elements of the proposal which I think perhaps potentially impact future residents. An individual, I don't like the idea of obscured windows. However, that is an option within the R codes to facilitate privacy measures, and the RAR accepts this in that context. So on balance, I find the proposal in line with the planning framework, and I understand that this is a change for the local residents and they are concerned, and I respect their concern around how it will impact their current living conditions. But it is indeed in line with that vision for the area in terms of density. In fact, this development scale is perhaps somewhat less than could occur if the full R80 code were to be followed. Matters to do with boundary fencing, obviously there is legislation beyond the planning framework to deal with those matters, but we have heard that there is the opportunity for meetings and hopefully a resolution without having to rely upon that external legislation to resolve the matter satisfactorily for all parties. There are some aspects which required interpretation. I think the matter of the waste and the bin storage, that's been clarified. Enclosed means that with a roof, and that's fitting with the local planning policy. And obviously beyond that, if there are odour concerns, then there is additional legislation outside of the planning framework to have that monitored and any complaints dealt with. Presiding member, I do have some amendments that I would like to propose, please.
Yes.
The first amendment, and this relates to some of the matters raised through the R13, is to add the list of plans which the R13 has provided, but in doing so to provide the correct date reference to the natural ventilation diagram and floor layouts, which I think was said to be the 22nd of June.
Yes.
That would be my first amendment.
That's 1.2.
Yes.
Adding list. So we would need to shown on the approved plans dated. Need to change 1.2, I think.
Yes, I think we just have a semicolon after plans. We insert the list. We delete that dated received 8th of June 26, and then continued as defined in the City of Vincent local planning scheme, please.
All right, so that's moved. Is there a seconder for that member? Simon, thank you.
I don't think I really need to speak to it. It's purely administrative and gives a degree of certainty around what we are approving today and what runs with the development.
All right, I'll seek, sorry, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously, thank you.
Thank you. My second amendment is to condition 2.3. And where 2.3, the second sentence says the air conditioning unit shall be relocated and screened. I would like to delete the word and place the word or.
Okay, is there a second for that? Member Simon, thank you.
Thank you. I think whilst the DRP did raise some of this, I think a complete relocation requires completely refitting and redesigning, and particularly the roof structure, etc., etc. And I think that can therefore have knock-on effects to all sorts of other management plans. And I think the issue here is that they should be contained in a way that they are not as audible, but also contained in a way that they are not impacting the ability and outlook of future residents. So I think that gives that opportunity for flexibility there.
Member Simon seconded.
Yes, look, I agree. I don't think there's any need to do both. I think it's one or the other.
Further speakers on that? No. Okay, I'll put that amendment. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. My next amendment is to condition 4.2, which relates to landscape, and that is simply to provide some clarity. And my suggestion is the wording should go prior to the occupation or use of the development. That sentence ends then. Some new words: landscape works on the subject site to be, delete the word and, then continue maintained thereafter to the satisfaction of the city, etc., etc. I would also propose with this a new advice note, which reads, any landscape works within the verge would be managed through the city standard requirements for works within the road reserve verge area.
Sorry, can you just repeat your changes to 4.2?
Yeah, so it goes, all work shown in the approved landscaping plan shall be undertaken in accordance with the approved plans to the satisfaction of the city prior to the occupation or use of the development, full stop. And then I have some new words. Landscape works on the subject site to be, delete the word and, maintained thereafter to the satisfaction of the city, expense of the owners, occupiers. And then the new advice note explains that work within the verge would be managed through the city standard regime.
Thank you. I'm seeking a second for that. Yes, Member Simon, thank you.
There was just some confusion because the landscape plan covers matters in the verge as well as on the site. Obviously, what's on the verge is a responsibility once implemented of the city under their normal regime. What's on the site itself is to be managed in perpetuity in accordance with the approval.
A second.
It's just a matter of clarification, I think.
Further speakers?
Can I just ask a question of the city on that? Because I grew up in the suburbs. We all take care of our verges there. I think in the city, we take responsibility for main thoroughfares, but otherwise verge treatments, we try and encourage landowners to maintain. Whether that such a condition would sit within our policy and what we're trying to achieve. And I would encourage the proponent to take care of their verge themselves. He's still available.
Michael.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I was just being promoted back to being able to participate. So we wouldn't typically condition for a landowner in any type of development to maintain the verge unless there was a specific nexus around something that they were providing that was a little bit unusual in the verge area that was proposed as part of the development. So I'm just, sorry, quickly going onto our website just to have a look. So we do have some provisions around local policies, so not planning policies, but city policies that talks about maintenance of the verge being the responsibility of the adjacent landowner occupier, and that the city encourages residents to maintain the verge. So it's a position that the city has to encourage residents, but it's not we don't have a planning mechanism to require them to do so. So yeah.
Thank you.
With you, Councillor Wallace?
No, I think it's a sensible.
Okay, all right. So I shall put the amendment. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Still with you, Member Hyde.
I'm happy to amend conditions 11.1 and 11.2 according to the wording that was provided, but I'm not quite sure where that wording needs to go.
It was to be
in the second subparagraph or phrase
after statutory declarations in the event that option 2 is chosen.
In the event that option 2 is chosen, I'm happy to move that.
No seconder for that? Yes, Councillor Warner, thank you.
Simply provides that clarity.
No further speakers, I'll put that over. Carried unanimously, thank you.
Thank you. And my last amendment, and I won't read them all out, but to reword the advice notes as per the information provided through the R13 by the city.
Seconder for that. Member Simon, thank you.
Some of the advice notes had previously read of a more statutory nature. They're now softened to be advisory and encouraging. But it does provide additional information, which is useful.
Okay. Further speakers on that? No. All right. I'll put that. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Nothing further. So I'll move to the seconder.
Thank you. I follow that really. Look, I support the proposed development application for 19 Lincoln Street. The development represents an appropriate use of the site. It's consistent with the planning objectives.
Excuse me, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Dan, can you? Thank you. Carry on.
Basically, I am supportive of the applicants maintaining the conversations with the residents about ways they can improve the amenity. But overall, yes, I'm supportive of this application.
Thank you. Further speakers?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Chair and Councillor Warner, for your comments as well. Yeah, I think it has been acknowledged by everybody in the room and all presenters today that this isn't a decision that's getting made on land use at the moment. This is a residential proposal that's been put forwards, and we have to assess it against the R codes and the planning framework on that basis. So having said that, on the elements that they are asking for discretion outside of the default acceptable outcomes, I think what's being proposed is largely acceptable. The reduction to the primary street setback is reasonably considerable compared to the acceptable outcome, but I think looking around the streetscape on the north side in particular, you've got a building typology, the heritage semis that are very common around that area. They typically present quite similar to this proposal in that you've got a narrow frontage 4 to 5 metres that sits well forwards on the lot. So that typology is already present on Lincoln Street. So I think it's kind of a good precedent in that area for this proposed setback. And I also think Lincoln Street itself is quite a large and wide road reserve for the Highgate area. And that kind of extended road reserve pretty significantly reduces the impact of any reduced setback on that streetscape. The lot boundary setback to the west in particular, we're seeking a bit of a deviation from the acceptable outcome there. I think it's largely acceptable. I'm quite skeptical about the ability of a 1.8 colour bond fence or the existing 1.8 timber fence to provide any real kind of bound or other separation between the two developments. This is quite a significant intensification of use of this particular lot. I think it's been well said that this isn't as intense as development could get on this lot, and that is significant to acknowledge. We're missing a story compared to the acceptable outcome and probably a few lots and some plot ratio area as well. So it hasn't been maxed out in terms of what could be put on this site, but it is quite significant. You've got 7 multi-res developments in very close proximity to single res developments on much larger lots. So I think I have concerns about that fence, and I'll probably put forward an amendment around requiring masonry. I'm very interested to see what the other panel members think. But otherwise, I think that setback's been appropriately managed. The building separation, I think that's fine. The officers, the city's response and explanation of why that's acceptable, I completely agree with, and I think that the same goes for the remainder. The lack of on-site car parking, I have no concerns with. You have incredible access to supermarkets all of Beaufort Street. You've got extremely high frequency bus routes in the area, and that the city is looking to discourage car ownership and promote alternate transport. So I think this is the exact type of development that we should be accepting of reduced car parking. In terms of on-street parking, we don't issue street parking permits to multi-res, and I'd hope and expect that that's consistent with this lot as well. So overall, I think this is it's a passable proposal, and that's probably my opinion. I will, if we are doing amendments straight after we speak, I will put one forwards just to speak to the construction of that western fence, and I'll probably include on the eastern facade. So give me a second to scroll back up through the conditions. So I think condition section 3, colours and materials, would be an appropriate place, and I put forwards a proposed additional condition 3.3 that states the the final colour of the eastern facade should be with the eastern neighbour, and I'm happy to take amendments to my wording. I'm doing it on the fly here. Should be the final colour of the eastern facade should be agreed with the neighbour to the east prior to implementation.
My only concern
Yes, I'm happy to take feedback.
is it requires a third party agreement, which is a basic fundamental principle of not
Not doing that.
not doing it.
Consultation with.
In consultation with.
Consultation with, yes.
Can I put and to the satisfaction of the city, and they can be mediated?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Start from the top then. The colour of the eastern facade should be developed in consultation with neighbour to the east and implemented to the satisfaction of the city.
Okay.
Next up, the
One at a time.
We'll do that.
that's that one, and then we'll do fences as 3
I'll take that one first.
Okay, let's do that one.
Right. Move Councillor Wallace. What am I doing that for? Councillor Wallace, is there a seconder for that? Member Syme, thank you. Councillor Wallace, you want to speak on that?
Look, I think it's a decision that wouldn't have a cost implication for the developer. It's an extremely large and imposing wall. While it is deemed to comply, will have massive impacts on the livability of that space. I think the colour choice of that facade has no impacts on the subject lot, a huge impact on the neighbouring lot. So I think it'd be a good neighbourly thing to do to just get their consultation on the colour choice.
Member Syme, a seconder.
I think Councillor Wallace has just said everything that needs to be said about that.
Okay, further speakers on that? Yes.
Thank you. I'm not entirely comfortable with it. My preference would be that 3.1 was amended to consider colour schemes which reduce reflectivity and impact on neighbouring residences, and leave that up to the city and the design review panel to look holistically at the development. That's a personal point of view, so I won't support the amendment.
Further speakers? I agree with Member Hyde. I think the intent is right, but I think it's better that it has a purpose, with the purpose being to reduce that reflectivity and impact, and that between the city and the design review panel and the applicant, I think they are the best placed. And look, in that process, they may consult the adjoining owner. So I'm not supporting it, but I would support a further amendment. Sure.
I really appreciate what you're trying to achieve with this, and I really encourage that, but I do actually really support what you're saying there about the manageability of achieving this result. So I'm inclined to not support this amendment.
The mover to
I might just withdraw it. I think it's going to fail anyway, and I do like
withdrawing it, are you? Okay, then that motion is withdrawn. Okay, still with you, Councillor Wallace.
Try a similar angle with the materiality of that western fence. So again, I think it'd be a neighbourly thing to do to install the masonry fence here. There'd be a significant reduction in noise coming across. It just adds to a feeling of separation and security from the adjoining development, and would be a neighbourly thing to do, considering the intensification of use, some of the other compromises that are being made.
Where are you proposing?
So I would go into the end of section 3 again. Well, try and draft something that says the boundary
fence to the western boundary. The whole thing gets it.
well, probably the area projecting forward of the house could be something else. Yeah, that's true.
Want to say something?
No, thank you.
No, the tree.
The tree.
No, I think we just need to.
Again, it'd have to be
move
the
something.
of the city kind of thing. In
And what, Councillor Wallace, in essence, what are you saying? Something.
I think I'd like that fence to be for all or the large majority of it, masonry. To a minimum of 1.8 and preferably to 2.1 or higher, in agreement with the neighbour on that end.
I might be too for that one. Behind the building line, I would.
Yeah.
Behind the building line of.
Let's get some wording.
Of number 21.
Understanding my intent, do you have something that you might be able to suggest?
My concern at the moment is that because there's another condition
Yes.
which says that we need to meet the measures, recommended measures in the acoustic report, as to whether or not we're now in conflict with the acoustic report,
No,
which
is about amenity as much as acoustic.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the wording then might be that the proposed fence along the western boundary should be
Masonry construction.
masonry construction to a minimum height of 1.8 metres.
Yes.
Or 2.1 immediately adjoining built form.
Up to 2.1, where it abuts, where it in line with the house in 2.1 behind the building line of house of number 21
Lincoln Street, yeah.
All right, let's start again. The boundary fence along the fence along the western boundary is to be of masonry construction to a minimum height of 1.8 and to a height of 2.1 adjacent to the building.
Behind the front building line of 21.
Behind the front building line.
21 Lincoln Street.
Okay. All right. That's that.
We'll go back.
Okay. So that's.
I need to apologise and thank you everyone for your patience.
So Wallace, is there a second? I guess that's. So, Councillor Wallace, did you want to speak on that?
I think I've said a lot on this in fragmented sections, but just to, I guess, insulate the impacts of this development on 21 Lincoln Street from noise, amenity, visual.
Okay.
Yes, look, even though this is an R80 zoning and even though it is in transition, I still think we need to have regard for the actual impact of existing residents who may well be there for quite some time. And I think this does a fairly modest approach to that, and it will also make some of the concerns about, for example, the bin store a lot easier to handle as well.
Thank you. For the speakers.
May I ask a question? On this western border, we are retaining a large tree. Can we just clarify that building a wall such as this is going to be possible while we're retaining that tree as well?
That is beyond my capability.
Is that something that we're able to ask the applicant if they?
I'm sort of reluctant at this stage.
You could have a section of it where the tree is, which was not masonry, and that would.
Okay, okay. If we prepared to bear in mind that we've got a massive tree.
It's a solvable problem.
Except as required to retain the existing tree.
Like
the end.
Okay.
Case, I would really be supportive of this amendment.
The landscaping plan is still there, so So the end of that amendment is without impacting existing tree.
Yes. Retained tree.
Retained tree. Okay, all right. Further speakers on that?
I don't want to seem horrible. I feel a little uncomfortable because this has not come out of the acoustic reporting. It isn't uncommon for the DAP to clarify walling where there are other levels of amenity. I feel like it would happen anyway because there's a meeting of minds between the applicant and what's being sought. I think the city officers said that they were unsure about the head of power even to impose this. I'm just a little uncomfortable about going above and beyond without having the science behind it. I think it would certainly improve the amenity, potentially improve the acoustics, but the acoustic reporting is saying that the colour bond, because of its density per square metre, is acting adequately anyway. So, yeah, I'm unsure.
Further speakers? Well, I agree. I'm a little bit hesitant about going down this path, and I guess making up conditions on the run always worries me. I would be happy for the applicant and the adjoining owners to get together and decide the wall, and that where they've already agreed to do that. So at this stage, I can't support that recommendation, that condition. Is there a? Oh, sorry, we've had all the speakers. Back to the mover.
I'll just say briefly, yeah, I think, I was more than happy to kind of leave the colour one as a discussion, kind of outside of a specific condition, because I think with no cost implications, there's little that could trip that process up. This one, the additional cost likely going to be objected to by the proponent, and I just think this is something that's to manage the amenity impacts on the adjacent lot. This is something that is incumbent on the proponent lot to implement, and would therefore prefer to have it here. And I do acknowledge your comments around process, and apologies for not.
All right, that ends the debate on that. I'm going to put that amendment. All in favour? Against? That's carried. 3-2. Thank you.
Nothing further from me.
Nothing further. Further speakers?
That's me. Look, if this is now approvable, I think it fits within, it is an R80 development, it's entirely consistent with that. In the scheme of things, it's relatively modest as an R80 development. Provides a pretty good level of accommodation here, and I think that we've got, while there are some reasonable concerns from adjoining properties, I think this is something which is to be expected in a place in transition, and also something which we've done a reasonable amount of trying to ameliorate any of those concerns. So overall, it's important that this type of accommodation is built. It's important that this scale of accommodation is built in this location. And I think this approach to us is quite a reasonable one. I think it can be improved.
Thank you. Look, I too am prepared to support this proposal. It fits within the current planning framework and satisfies the key recommendations in the city's planning strategy, which has been in place for some time. And importantly, the objectives of the residential zone under the planning scheme. So it is a site which is zoned R80. And there is an expectation that there would be developed at a much greater density than currently in place. Unfortunately, with this comes greater scale and bulk, which is unfortunate and unavoidable. Our job is to determine whether there are sufficient and totally unacceptable amenity impacts, or whether they they are manageable and acceptable in the circumstances and within the terms of the planning framework. I note the community concerns expressed in their submissions, and I appreciate the comments that they've made today and passion with which they presented those. I also note that following the initial consultation period, there were some changes made to the plans, although not all matters were addressed. It is clear that the major concerns from the community relate to that bulk and scale of the development and the front and side setbacks and the bins and access along the side. It is an area in transition to a higher density, and as such, there will be more demanding requirements. I'm satisfied with the arguments presented in the RAR in terms of the setbacks and as proposed, although I fully acknowledge that this is a big change to the streetscape and impact on the neighbours. Also note the comments and advice of the DRP and their support for the proposed development. The units are well designed, noting that they all achieve silver level accessibility. Having vehicle access off the lane is also a bonus from my point of view in avoiding more traffic along Lincoln Street. I accept the key areas for discretion to be exercised being the setbacks, the parking and the landscaping. The proposed conditions will ensure that these elements are appropriately implemented. I support the arguments as presented in the RAR in relation to those elements and obviously support the changes we've managed to make through amendments. So having said that, I'll go back to the mover to wind up the debate.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody's comments. I don't wish to say any more really other than there is one minor modification, presiding member, that I feel would sum up our discussion and doesn't substantially change anything that's gone before. That would be to condition 3.1, which relates to the materiality. I think I'm right there, yes. And my proposed wording is as follows. I'll read. So it's the current text prior to the issue of a building permit, a schedule detailing the colour and texture of the building materials that is consistent with the approved plans and demonstrating that the proposed development complements the surrounding area, input words, and reduces reflectivity impacts on adjacent lots, comma, continue, shall be submitted to and approved by the city on the advice of the city's design review panel. That's my amendment to 3.1.
Is there a second of that? Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. I do think it takes account of what we heard earlier around, a large expanse of bright white and that level of reflectivity, which could be quite impactful. Far be it from me to choose the right colour associated with this. I think in the hands of the city and their advisory design panel, that can be considered as a whole for the development without impacting its integrity and design considerations. So I think that does what it needs to.
Councillor Warner, a seconder.
I've got nothing more to add. Thank you.
Further speakers? No, all right, I'll put that amendment. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
It's a close debate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I shall now put the motion as amended. All in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. And just to the meeting, there's no forms 2, there's no section 31 and D. Stat applications are listed on the DAP website, and I'll close the meeting at 12:15. Thank you everyone for your attendance. Thank you. Thank you to the staff. Thank you to our support, and thank you to everyone who attended today.